pandemic has affected many communities since lockdown in March of this year, but with a return to college this semester, students have had to adjust to online schooling. The University of Tennessee in Knoxville has undergone some big changes. Most classrooms have been pushed online and most dorms have limitations as to what students can do while there. It's not just hard for on-campus students though. We sat down with Katie Tomiczek, a student at the university, to talk about the biggest impact that COVID-19 restrictions have had on her.
I just got to have the majority of my freshman year pre-pandemic, and it was definitely a very different experience, especially since I was in the dorms. And I know there's a lot of restrictions now, but obviously there were basically none last year. And I think the biggest impact is not having classes in person. I think it's a lot harder to make yourself remember that you're at school when you're not on campus at all, especially since I do live a little bit off campus now. It was a lot easier to stay focused, I think, when you're going to classes in person. So that was definitely better.
Planning for classes can already be hard before the pandemic, but now with classes online, students are having to find a way to make sure they can keep up with a heavier workload.
I found out less than a year ago I got diagnosed with ADHD, which did explain a lot. And that's also, definitely made it harder to adjust myself to online school. I have to do a lot to make sure I stay organized. I have like a color-coded calendar that I try to keep up with. I have all kinds of reminders. And of course I still miss stuff because every class is set up differently and it's really hard to keep track of when everything's in a different spot. But overall, it's less that my learning styles had to change and more that I've had to try harder. So yeah, the workload definitely has had a strong impact on my mental health and everyone around me. Like, I don't know a single person that's not kind of struggling extra right now. But personally, it's definitely harder to deal with obviously the ADHD, but more so with like anxiety and depression stuff. Everything is just so different, and it's hard, one, adjusting to change, but two, kind of being so reliant on your own like intrinsic motivation, and that I think has been especially difficult.
Extracurriculars have been harder to come by during the pandemic, with many clubs moving to online Zoom meetings or being entirely canceled. This has made campus life and interactions with other students more difficult.
I think right now it's extra super important for people to make sure that they're doing stuff that they enjoy. And I know it's really hard to do because you can't really go anywhere or be in the clubs that gave you joy before. Like, I haven't been able to, I used to be in the mindfulness and meditation club, but they haven't had a single in-person meeting this semester, obviously, so that's been something I've really removed myself from temporarily. But on my own, I've taken up taking care of a lot of plants. That's something that I didn't think I could do before, but I do have around 13 of them now. And I also, I'm like an artist in my free time. That's something I do a lot.
Nearly 22 million people have lost their jobs during the pandemic, and for college students, the situation is no different.
Finding a job right now has been next to impossible. I know a lot of my other friends that have also been looking for jobs have had to apply to so many places, and it's just such a different experience, especially when looking for a job is already so nerve-wracking. So yeah, I'm still hunting right now, although I really hope that I will get one, by the end of winter break at least.
On top of the stress of classes, students also have to worry about potentially contracting the incredibly contagious virus.
I live in a house with 5 people, including myself, and 3 of us have had COVID. And it's been at separate times as well. So one of my roommates got it a couple months ago, and we had to quarantine for a while during that time. And I think I got tested 3 times during that instance, to just eventually confirm that I was negative. And then for some reason, none of the rest of us got sick, even though we lived with her during that time. Recently, right before Halloween, another one of my roommates tested positive, and we had to cancel our Halloween plans. she went home, but then obviously the rest of us got tested just to see what was going on. And out of the 3 of us that hadn't already had it at that point, 1 more of us got it. So I went and quarantined in my parents' basement, and I have again tested negative twice since then. But it has been a constant, quarantining, getting tested, not seeing certain people for 2 weeks and then doing it again. And it is interesting because I think we are a lot more careful than a certain majority of college students. Like, I haven't been to any parties or anything, but it is just such a presence.
With next semester being online, students will once again have to turn to themselves for motivation and support as they look to push through the year in hopes that a vaccine will be available before the next school year.